Ambassador R. James Woolsey, who is the former CIA director, on the line. And Mr. Ambassador, you've heard everything that has been happening here. What's your best take about, again, a lot of things we don't know at this point, but what we do know? What does this lead you to believe about this situation?
Well, it's a moving target, and you may remember a couple of years ago the large number of Russians that were put into the U.S. by the KGB to live here and have careers here and so forth, and perhaps to be called upon someday to be used. I think that one thing that is very interesting is where these folks are from is still not entirely clear. One of the names sounds Chechen, may or may not be Chechnya, maybe some part of Russia, who knows. But if they've been here a long time and they have a planned operation with the kind of explosive device that's in the Al-Qaeda online website, has been for several years, dual explosions, all of this kind of sounds very much like Al-Qaeda type operations.
Wow.
And it's just, I think it's pretty unlikely that this is some Russian operation. It's just very hard to tell until we know more about their backgrounds.
Mr. Ambassador, let me tell you just the very latest that's being reported by Pete Williams from NBC, and this has just been reported in the last several minutes, is that the two brothers, one of them is 26 and was born in Russia. He became a legal permanent resident in 2007. The other brother, that is the older brother who was killed earlier this morning. The other suspect was born in July of 1993. He is the one identified by the FBI as wearing the white hat in the pictures we've been seeing. He has a Massachusetts driver's license and is a resident of Cambridge. He was apparently born in Kyrgyzstan. And what you said was very interesting. You talked about those Russian sleepers. I'm assuming you meant the Russian sleepers who were put here back in the 1950s to eventually be...
Well, I mean, there were those, but I was thinking about the ones about a year or two ago that the fairly large number of them that were traded, released back to Russia.
Yeah. Anna Chapman and some of the others.
Right.
So this would be a situation that, again, there's a lot we don't know, but that's an incredibly interesting theory, and the first time that we've kind of heard that put forth, the idea that these could potentially be Chechen sleepers.
Well, it raises the question, where did this young man get his training? I mean, he was 9 years old when he came here.
Where and when?
Yeah,
where and when?
Very good question. Well, we have had people trained in the U.S. or taken out of the U.S. for a time and trained by Al-Qaeda. It's or Al-Qaeda affiliates. It's one of the things that they have done. It's just really too soon to tell. But having been here that long, it sounded like they came, one of them anyway, just after, a year or two after 9/11. That would have been pretty early for this possibility that I just raised.
We hadn't seen Chechens operating in the United States, certainly, but very few operating outside of Chechnya or Russia to this point. What would drive them to the United States?
Only if someone had control over them or their families and ordered them to do so, or they were, true believers in some cause. It's very speculative at this point. I think that one just really needs to know a lot more about both of their families' backgrounds, education, travel, and at that point people could start fitting together whether one or both has been here for some time with dastardly plans, or whether this is some kind of I don't know, late developing anger toward the U.S. The thing that makes me think it's ideological, in part, is the target. Like 9/11, when the targets, if it hadn't been for the heroes on Flight 93, would have included the Congress. But the Pentagon and the World Trade Center, these are emblematic of the United States. And Patriots Day in Boston commemorates the American Revolution, Lexington and Concord. It is something that an ideological enemy, not just someone who was crazed for workplace violence or something like that, would go after. Do you remember the bomber back in '96 at the Olympics in Atlanta.
Yes.
He was just sort of a right-wing nut who was also blowing up abortion clinics. And there really wasn't any ideology there at all. But it's hard to say when you target something that is symbolic of the United States. You probably think, or the group you're part of probably thinks of itself as an enemy of the United States in some way, and it's sort of here, take this, Americans, that kind of thing.
But Mr. Ambassador, I guess that's my point, and to explain to a layperson what the beef the Chechens would have with the Americans at this point, because it doesn't seem to me like America and Russia have all that great of relations lately. What happened in the past to turn their anger towards us?
Well, it is very strange, because their beef is with the Russians, so we're not the ones who are occupying their country. On the other hand, some of them, some of the Islamist terrorists have been Chechen. I think not many, but a few. And we just don't know. I think one would have to really need to know a lot more about their education and background and history before you could make any kind of judgment.
Was there an event that happened, I guess, surrounding 9/11? You point out that at least one of them, according to our information, at least one of them came as early as 2002 or 2003. Was there anything around 9/11 that could have potentially, again, working on that theory that you threw out before, if these are sleepers who were put here for a long time, what would have happened around that time, around 9/11, that would have potentially made them put them here or there?
I mean, 9/11 wasn't the last thing. That wasn't the first thing that Al-Qaeda did. It was just the biggest. But the first World Trade Center bombing back in '93, there have been a lot of things that Islamist terrorist groups, either affiliated with Al-Qaeda or encouraged by Al-Qaeda or similar to Al-Qaeda or whatever, have either brought off or tried to bring off in the United States. And some of these have almost ludicrously been labeled workplace violence. Remember, Major Hassan was giving lectures to his fellow soldiers about how he was on jihad, and then when the report about him got written up by the U.S. government, it did not mention either Islam or jihad or anything. It was workplace violence, and the people who were wounded aren't getting Purple Hearts down there because it was workplace violence, not an enemy. So the U.S. government is sort of slow sometimes, if it doesn't fit the narrative, to come up with a solution that suggests a war between us and the terrorists, particularly Islamist terrorists, may still be on. But I don't know that this is part of that. This may be something completely off-theme, like Atlanta.
Mr. Ambassador, you made some good point. Patriots Day in Boston. At least maybe now we have a pretty good idea that it wasn't because it was April 15th, Tax Day, which was actually floated by certain people. I guess that would have brought in the militia idea, homegrown Tax Day, which some people were probably hoping for, but probably not.
It's Lexington and Concord is 18th of April. That's what gives rise to Patriots Day, and they move it around to have it on a Monday. But this is a commemoration of the beginning of America's fight for freedom. This is not just a regular marathon somewhere in the U.S.
Ambassador Woolsey, we want to thank you very much for your time this